Hey, it's the Practical Prayer Podcast on the New Thought Media Network. I am Bill Marchiony over here in Philadelphia, and that's Carol Lawrence over there in the suburbs. All right, you think
Hi.
of yourself as being in the suburbs of Atlantic City.
Is that what it is? I,
I'm
I
going to
guess
go with
so.
that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. So I missed you last week. I missed everybody here last week, but I was on retreat. I was
How'd that
up
go?
taking a little me time on the up on the northern Delaware River. It was wonderful. My prayer partner lives up there, and on Monday afternoon we decided we were going to go kayaking because it was going to get really hot on Tuesday, and so
Hmm.
we had just an absolutely gorgeous late afternoon, early evening on the river. We were there for like 3.5 hours, gently down the stream. My ass, 9 miles in the in a kayak.
Just it just hit me what you said. Okay.
But the amazing part
No
was, I mean,
warnings, right?
no, not from me. When you go into those parts, you're looking for the interesting wildlife, and like the peak experience is bald eagles, and we probably saw 40 bald eagles on this kayak ride
Wow.
because
I would love to see that.
the shad spawning season is just about over, so the eagles are having a feast, and they were everywhere, like four and
Wow.
five at a time. It was awesome. It was just awesome. My
Did you take pictures and videos?
No, I did not bring my phone with me because I'm smart enough to know that if I'm going in a kayak in in the rapids, that if I bring my phone, it's going to come home being a soggy brick. So I have
Yeah,
a couple of
I get
pictures.
that.
One before we got in, and one my my partner, my buddy, had his phone in a dry bag, and he took it out and took one picture. But other than
I
that,
get it.
yeah, and his house is right on the river, so I got to take pictures there. So yeah, but it was wonderful. All by way of saying, I really missed you guys. I'm so sorry to have not been here last week for the Practical Prayer Podcast.
Well, um, I think everybody I think everybody must have missed us too, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I got a couple friends on here that, you know, like to laugh at us.
Well, that's
Or
one of the things that we can do. And actually, I was talking to the Philly Spiritual Adventurers yesterday about scheduling an event, and I set it up to be at noon on a Monday.
mhm.
And Lynn, who's in the group, said, "Well, you're busy at 1 o'clock on Mondays." Because Lynn likes
People
to
keep
listen
track
here
for
as
you.
well. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
so it's nice to have somebody watching my calendar and actually telling me that I shouldn't preempt an event like the Practical Prayer Podcast. And so let me explain for folks who are joining us on New Thought Media Network for the first time and are wondering, why are these two people just kind of on here babbling about nothing much? There's a method to our madness. This is the live recording session for the Practical Prayer Podcast. The podcast airs as an audio-only podcast out there in podcast land, and a new episode drops every Wednesday morning at 4 a.m. Eastern Time. And we've been doing the recording sessions on New Thought Media Network because we get to spend some time doing some just chatting beforehand before we get to recording the episode. And we can also open up to questions and requests and insights and comments from the audience. So if you are watching live on New Thought Media Network, then you can put something into your social media comments and we'll see it and have the opportunity to respond to it. If you are watching the recording, you can still take part. Go to the website, which is bethelight.com, be-the-light.com, like it says right down there. And in the Practical Prayer podcast section, there's a comment button, and you can put your comment in there, and we will do the same thing with you. But we get together every week, and we talk about practical prayer. And it is fascinating because Carol has been thinking of stuff to talk about for 157 episodes. And I am just tickled by the fact that that there's that much to talk about. So I know that there is. So do you know what we're going to talk about today?
I do. I do. And this is it's the summertime, and summertime is laid back, but really important things are still happening within us. And so I did kind of bump into something, and I found myself looking in your book for a reference. And I thought it would be nice to
Okay.
share that. Okay. So I'm thinking of prayers for emotional wholeness. And
Mm.
I can explain it now or later. It's up to you. But
No,
it's
I'm
it's one
intrigued
of
by
those
that. We'll
really
do that when we
important
get
things that
into recording the episode.
doesn't take a holiday. Okay, this subject doesn't.
That's
It
true.
doesn't.
That's true. No,
Yeah.
and I mean, holidays are times when we're reminded that we don't have emotional wholeness if we're dealing with that sort of a challenge. But by all means, let's do that inside of the Practical Prayer podcast episode. And just because we keep on talking about it, let's go ahead and start said podcast episode now.
Go.
Somebody move my opening.
That's what happens when you miss a week. Stuff changes.
I don't know if that's what it is. Yeah, all of the video clips are in a different order now. Some gremlins
Better
have been
than
here
you
doing
forgot.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Now I found it.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony. How are you?
And we're going to have another fun conversation diving into the details about practical prayer for real results. And I understand that you have a topic, prayers for emotional wholeness. And tell me the backstory about where the inspiration for that came from.
Yes. Well, the backstory actually comes from where a lot of my stories come from, or questions or subjects, from people that I talk to. And emotional wholeness and need for emotional healing doesn't take a holiday. It reminded me because I stopped doing something for the summer, and I announced that, and then and got a lot of pushback from it. And I thought about the things that are important that you need help with and support with, and all of that never take a holiday. So I looked at prayers for emotional wholeness just to kind of, and the first line I bumped into was, God is love and God is all there is. And of course, it took me back to what I shared once before about my first experience with you in a class, and we had to do our prayer, and it was God is all there is, and people were saying this. One guy said, if somebody else says this, I am, out.
I'm out of here, yeah.
Yeah, and in case you didn't hear that from a previous broadcast, I was brand new, and I didn't know what else to say, and I thought, if I say this and this guy goes away, but if I don't say this, I don't know what else to say. And then I thought, okay, look, he's doing what he's doing. I got to do this. So I said, God is all there is. And a lot of times I will go with something until I figure it out, or until it registers for me. And God is all there is. It took a minute because there's so much in our world going on, so our relationships, our jobs, and our relationships to our jobs and people on our jobs and all that business. And it could leave you emotionally crazy because everybody needs something, or you have to be something to each different person in different situations. And by the time you're all that, you're totally exhausted and not knowing who you are. And I just thought about emotional exhaustion, emotional brokenness, And I just decided to go through your book to see it. And there it was, Prayer for Emotional Wholeness, and God is all there is. And let me say this, and I'm turning it over to you because I know you got it. When you say God is all there is, and you really kind of get it, it really sinks in. And don't be feeling bad if it doesn't sink in right away, because it's a different thought, because there's a whole lot of stuff out here. But if God is all there is, that's the place you start for healing, balance, etc.
Yeah.
Now, that's the backstory.
Okay, so that's the backstory. And God is all there is. And yes, it can be boring to hear people, especially the ones who are just getting started in this teaching, come to that epiphany that God is all there is, and then repeat that, especially when you've got 15 people in a class and they're going around in a circle about what they learned this week, and everybody who was supposed to learn and deepen into the awareness that God is all there is, that they're all saying the same thing. And, it was actually the person who said, if somebody else says, that, again, I'm going to get annoyed, was doing everybody a disservice, because the idea is for everybody to understand that key element of this philosophy. God is all there is. And it is, as you have pointed out over the course of 156 previous episodes, not the way that people in traditional spiritual backgrounds and religions think about the world. God is all there is like, no, there's God, and then there's God's creation, and then there's me over here, and then there's the way stuff gets divvied up, and there's the rules, and there are the intermediaries, and there are the prophets and the priests and the avatars and the people who are higher up on the scale than me. And we are so conditioned to think that there's a hierarchy and that we have to go through something or someone else to access that divine presence. And that's not true. There is only God. Everything is God expressed in its own way. Now, sometimes we are very keenly aware of our divine presence, and other times it is so mysterious to us that we can't imagine. What do you're looking at me and you're thinking God? I said, there must be something wrong with you. Because no, that's not true. And that's the mistake. That's the fallacy. That's the erroneous thinking or erroneous belief that somehow there is us over here and God somewhere else. So God is all there is the first step in that direction, to understand the infinite nature of creation and the oneness of creation. And that's the point where we get to begin to understand and access what that means. Because if God is all there is, then what I am is God's presence taking form. And all of the experience that I'm having are God's divine presence and unfolding and energy taking form. And everything that I like and everything that I don't like, everyone who I know, everyone who I don't know, is all that one taking different form. And it changes the context, which is why it is so important to talk about that. So, to loop way back around to the topic at hand of the prayers for emotional wholeness. Yeah, you can take a summer off from praying for emotional wholeness, but your emotions are going to be doing something for the summer. And if you've got emotional wholeness nailed down and it's going to work on autopilot for a while, great. And for people who are struggling or have been or keep forgetting, then taking the summer off is actually not going to help.
Yeah. I think it's a fundamental. It's so much. You've said so much. Like you always say, a whole lot, right? Because it's just a whole lot to know. That's okay though. That's good. I appreciate that. When you say God is all there is, and you think about everything in nature and things and what have you, also, it's God is in the circumstance, or God is the circumstance. And that, getting to that level has really helped me in a lot of ways, because then I'm looking at a circumstance and thinking, rather than trying to figure out how to fix it or even why it's happening, in the sense that what did I do wrong? What decision did I make? And how can I da-da-da-da-da? You come out of the I and ask this question, and I shared this with a friend of mine. What in this that I see is me.
Hmm.
And so I'm essentially looking for God in the situation, speaking back to me through the situation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And yeah, and so it seems like a maze, to get through, like, oh my God, how do I get to that understanding? But when you say God is all there is, you stand still and say, okay, now let me phrase this. If God is this, how do I phrase this to get the answer? Not that I want, but the communication that I'm after. That line of communication and alignment with God that I'm after.
Yeah.
And that's what that's how I do it.
Yeah. And our
And
relationship with the infinite is something that we get to experience ourselves. Some people go through life and they're completely oblivious to their spiritual nature, and that's fine. And other people, you and me included, are spending a lot of our time and energy and intention on understanding our divine nature and connecting with that divine nature and being more aware of that God presence that is in our life and that's in the world around us. And we're free to do that. And the important thing to remember is that none of what we're doing changes God at all. Did
mhm.
God put us here so that we could be the ultimate expression of intelligence, so that we can be the only species anywhere in the universe that can experience life the way that we're experiencing it, and we're the pinnacle of creation? Well, that's possible. It's pretty arrogant. It's pretty arrogant to think that we are the top of the iceberg. We're the cherry on the sundae. Maybe we are, and maybe we're not. And possibly we are just here because this is an opportunity for the infinite to experience itself in human form. And there could be other planets or other galaxies where it's going differently, and that experience of being an intelligent, self-directed species is completely different, and that's still the way for the divine to experience that divine essence. So I don't have to have a dog in the race about whether we're the best ever anywhere. I'm certainly not going to get into the competition with whether we've got more going on than the dolphins do. It doesn't matter. We're having the experience that we're having, and we are the opportunity for the infinite to experience itself as us.
That's kind of a big spoonful right there, because
Hmm.
if I if I can make a reference from my across the street, when you
Your
look at
prior
the
life, yeah.
story about, yeah, you look at the story of Job, and Job seems to be the pawn in this battle or confrontation between God and the devil. And you learn that story, and it's a nice story, and but when you start to think about it, you feel like, wait a minute, I'm just a pawn in this thing. And you can't help but feel annoyed. I'll leave it like that, annoyed, because I don't want to be a pawn in somebody else's thing. But then you come on to this side of the street and say, this is God experiencing God's self through my life and experiences. And I might be still chewing on that. I'm not I'm not sure, because I have flashbacks of feeling like I'm like sort of nothing in this thing, and I would certainly avoid anything that made me feel that way again. But not just through me, God experiencing or expressing God's self. I think I like that. Um,
Hmm.
but through circumstances that I encounter, because that makes me feel like I matter. Like I'm not any better, but I do matter. I'm you know significant in this whole thing, and what I'm experiencing is for my good and my good, better, and best. And so I can, I can kind of hang on to that. If this is God expressing God's self for my good, better, and best, I can kind of do that,
Hmm.
and yeah, and in so many ways, you can find so many meaningful lessons and principles and possibilities is a better word, so many possibilities out of God expressing God's self through a particular circumstance. Um, but I don't know. I think I read somewhere that God is knowing God's self. I kind of figure God, you know yourself already, don't you? I don't know. I don't want to go any further because then I'm starting to get away and get into another subject. I want to stay
Yeah.
right
So
here.
let me continue on the subject you were on. The story of Job. There's a Native American story about the young man who goes and asks the shaman about the nature of good and evil, and the shaman says there are two dogs that live inside of me. There's a happy, peaceful, playful, joyous
Mm-hmm.
dog that lives inside of me, and there's an evil, angry, mean junkyard dog that lives inside of me, and they're fighting with each other all the time to have
Mm-hmm.
control.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy says, well, which one wins? And the shaman says, whichever one I feed. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all there. We're not necessarily pawns. The system is set up so that that we can just abdicate our participation in that and just throw the food down and let the dogs eat whatever they're going to eat and have it come up as being happy or sad and blame the dogs. Or we can claim our participation in the process and be involved in it. So both of
Mm-hmm.
those are good possibilities, and we get to participate in this creative enterprise. And back to where we started, God is all there is. God is in the shaman. God is in the guy asking the question. God is in the happy dog. God is in the unhappy dog. It's all God. And however it comes out is going to be okay because God gets to experience something there. And God doesn't need it to come out a particular way. That's just the way it's working.
So that perspective is that God is in it for God's self to see how things work out. And that's the little nuance that I'm struggling with at this moment, you know.
Not to see how they
Um,
turn out, to experience what turns out, to experience what happens. Let's
Very
take a
close to
break.
the
We
same.
could keep talking about this for like 6 or 8 hours. So let's take a break and then continue the conversation on hopefully the same topic and maybe only a little bit of a tangent.
Get inspiration in an instant. God calls are the gentle and uplifting moment of truth to help you remember that the bright light of God's love is shining right now as you
It's your God Call with Reverend Bill.
start your 2-week free trial today, and you'll get a phone call 4 times a week from Reverend Bill with an uplifting half-minute message filled with insight, wisdom, story, and fun.
Let your light shine.
You can answer the call to listen to it live or let it go to voicemail so you can hear it later. After the free trial, your subscription is just $5.95 a month. The details are at godcall.org. God calls are disruptive, intentionally.
Whenever you write something, put on a gold star.
They take you away from your routine to remind you about the truth of who you really are. They come at random times between 8:15 a.m. and 6 p.m., so you won't be expecting them. And somehow, the message is exactly what you need to hear at the time.
Magic is loose in the world.
It's a moment of motivation in the middle of your day. Find out more and start your 2-week free trial now at godcall.org.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony. And you know what?
Yeah, right before the break, you were about to push back on what I said, so go ahead.
Okay. All right. So let me say this. Here, let me read this part of your prayer, which helps me. Okay. So the first line is God is love and God is all there is. Therefore, I too am love. That's the piece that I was trying to express my feeling about. God is all there is, but I too. So I'm a part of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
While God is a part, God is everything. I'm not nothing, for things to be happening and to see how they work out. And again, that's probably shades of the other side of the street with the general interpretation or familiar interpretation of the Job story. But
Mhm.
when you get to the next line of your prayer and you say that, then I'm included in this. So whatever God is doing, there is purpose that includes me. And that makes it okay? Do you know what I mean? I can go the rest of the way with this. But if I'm just on the side and God is working things out, trying to see or experiencing it, I'm thinking like, okay, you probably could have picked somebody better than me. So, like what's in it for me kind of deal. Yeah. So all that's is emotional. It's an approach to healing and strengthening ourselves emotionally to handle situations. And I think the key might be in the second line where it says "I too."
Yeah. And the
I
part
too.
that we get to remind ourselves of is it's not all shiny gold star A-list opportunities and possibilities. When we say that God is love and God is all there is, therefore I too am love, what we're pointing out is not how great we are. What we're talking about is how everything is. In the current manifest universe, somebody gets to be the Dalai Lama, and somebody else gets to sell used cars at a buy here, pay here lot. And neither one of them is any less godly, although being judgmental, looking from the outside, I can tell you which one I would prefer to be. And yeah, for me personally, it's the guy who's exiled from his home country, but that's probably not the car salesman. So there are different levels of experience that we have. The important part about recognizing that God is all there is because the implication of that is that there is no true separation. And all the separation that we're seeing, all of the evaluations or judgments we can do between what's good and bad, what's preferable, what's objectionable, what it is that we like, what it is we don't like, that is simply a matter of opinion. Because underneath it all, it's all God and it's all love. And sometimes it's easy to see and sometimes it's not. But that doesn't change its nature. That says more about us, which is why that key statement is so simple and so important and has so much nuance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, I almost couldn't, I know the prayer, so I kind of knew where I was going when I opened the book, but I almost don't get past the second line because if you even stop there, it has so much meaning. Therefore, I too am love. So it's a place to stop and think about how is love working out in this situation? What is loving and lovely about it? And what is lovely for me to know? I can just stop there. If this is about love, then what is it that I need to know that takes me to that place of love and better, what is it? Better, and best, or good, better, and better, whatever I said. What takes me there? Yeah, yeah. So the prayer goes on. So I experience love in every part of my life. Therefore, there is only love, and I am in it. I am. And, and then you say insert. It's almost like you have to redefine who you are. In these situations that I thought about that made me bring this to us, you feel defeated sometimes or weak and not sure how to proceed after this point. But when you bring in or you introduce the idea of love in this, that there is a love result if you can't handle it being in the present moment, this present moment about love, there is a result, a resulting love or elevation of me in a higher place of love in God and me in this situation. Do you know what I mean? It's if God has got the whole thing and everything is God, then if I can rest in that, knowing that I too am part of that, then the unfolding of my understanding is going to be understanding God and how this is a God thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And the foundation of the philosophy God is all there is also what informs the beginning steps of the practical prayer. We always want to start the prayer by acknowledging that God is all there is, that all of the good that exists anywhere in the universe is God and that divine presence made manifest. So God is love, God is infinite abundance, God is harmony, God is joy, God is peace. And all of those things that we idealize and seek to have in our experience of life, they all exist in that divine power and presence that is God. And we call it God, we can call it nature, we can call it the big happy coincidence that's been the unfolding since the Big Bang happened. It doesn't matter how it got here, we know that that's what it is. So the universe did not start with two powers duking it out, figuring out who's going to do better, and certainly didn't start out with billions of different powers that are all careening together and fighting for who's going to be best. There's one source, one presence, one creative power that's creating everything. And along the way, it's created me, and it's created Carol, it's created everybody who's listening. And because that's what our source is, then we're part of that creative process, and we're then able to do the rest of the prayer, claiming the good that we're seeking in our personal experience of life as an individualization of that divine presence. I can pray for myself to have a more Dalai Lama-like experience, to be that peace and presence, that clarity, that insight, that wisdom, that love unfolding, and discard with the possibility that I'm going to be exiled from my country of origin or any of the other things that I might not like. And the prayer is aligning with that infinite power, understanding that we are part of it, and then using that same power to set the intention and open the channel for the new experience that we want to be having. God is all there is.
Which brings the issue or the subject of faith in it. And of course, I'm not going to let us go off on that tangent but if God is all there is, and God is love, and all of that, everything unfolds, or the intention is to unfold in that good, better, best situation. There's a sense of, I need to not just be patient necessarily, but knowing that this is love, and it's going to unfold in a good way, loving way, without defining necessarily. I don't have to feel bliss by the end of the day to think that this is love, but it's knowing that there's good in this, and I can spend some time looking for it. It's not just a question of patience, but faith that it is there because of who, what, where God is, however you want to look at it. Because of God being that one. I don't see it necessarily at this moment, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. And
right.
It will, it will unfold because it's a bigger thing than this situation.
Yeah, and my notion is that instead of patience, which is like we're sitting here waiting for God to get to the good stuff, it's more about peace of mind. It's more about being okay with what is now and being open to the possibilities that it can get better and better and better still. And then just being present to the transformation that's happening. Patience implies that there's something that that would otherwise leave us feeling impatient, and that we're overcoming our tendency to be impatient. And it's not a fight. It's not a fight. When we're having peace of mind and understanding that the things that are happening are fitting together in perfection, then something can come along that seems like it's really good and have it turn out to be really not that good at all. Like, my sister met this wonderful guy, and then it turns out, he's awful. Well, we didn't know. So, and being peaceful and just knowing that she's in her perfect relationship. She meets somebody, then she meets somebody else, and she meets somebody else. And just being peaceful and present as she goes through her process. And then when the right one comes along, being able to rejoice in that. And when the horrible one goes away, being able to rejoice in that. It's different than being impatient for Sis to finally find the right guy and do something different with her life because what's the matter with her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Or any of the areas in our life that we can feel like we know the answer and we're waiting for the manifest universe to catch up with what we already know is good.
It's a knowing, I think.
Yeah.
And as I listen to you, it is knowing that this is going to turn out in the best possible way for everybody concerned, even if, because I remember some of the prayers that you would sort of end that way, for the good of everybody and the best possible whatever. And I'm thinking, look, it's me right here trying to figure out. But yeah, that's the larger view. And when it's good for everybody concerned, that's even better for me. It's especially, and I'm thinking, always thinking of my children. Whatever it is, if it's good for them and it turns out wonderfully well for them, it's going to be wonderfully well for me.
Yeah.
Probably better than I could have figured out. Yeah, yeah. Because I'm operating from a limited framework. Oh, we could just talk about some things that I've read recently, but yeah, you get it. You get it.
Yeah. There are so many possibilities that when we're looking and we're saying, well, it could go this way or this way or this way or this way. There's an infinite number that we skipped over, that we weren't aware of, that possibilities that we never even considered. And the thing to do is for us to get out of the way. And I've told the story before about the very clever scientists who put a bunch of monkeys in a cage, and there were 10 ways to escape, and what they wanted to do is figure out which of the 10 ways the monkeys were going to use to escape, because then they get a better understanding of the monkeys. And the monkeys all escaped an 11th way. So it says much more about the scientists than it does about the monkeys. And the monkeys weren't trying to make the scientists look stupid. They were just doing what they did. And the unfolding was something completely different, and there was something different to learn there than what the clever scientists had thought they were going to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's take a break, and then we'll do that prayer from the book.
Okay.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We're having a great conversation about prayers for emotional wholeness and how it is important to, if we want to take the summer off, if we want to have an emotional or a spiritual holiday, we can, but we need to be aware of the fact that our creative power is continuing to work and our spiritual life is continuing to evolve and our emotions are going to continue to emote. So we better have enough gas in the tank to carry us through the time off and make sure that we can keep going.
Okay, gas in the tank.
Wait, you know what I
All
meant.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, you get somebody who says, I'm going to take some, I'm in week 6 of sobriety and I'm going to take the summer off from my AA meetings. It's like, yeah, this is not a good time to do that. You want to get a little bit more experience before you start skipping a meeting. And I'm not judging somebody or telling them what's going to happen. It's just a certain amount of experience will inform me as to this might not be the greatest idea. So the prayer that you were talking about here, and the prayers for emotional wholeness, and there's a section in the Practical Prayer for Real Results book on prayers for emotional wholeness. And this one is actually one of the shortest prayers in the book. It's on page 20. It's love throughout my life. And we'll do the prayer on love throughout my life, and I'm going to do a little bit of ad-libbing on behalf of everybody who's listening when we get to the realization or the affirmation step, because it is possible to put just about anything into the middle of this prayer. So love throughout my life begins, God is love, and God is all there is. Therefore, I too am love. So I experience love in every part of my life. There is only love, and I am it. There is only love, and so is everyone within the sound of my voice. That love is unfolding as the highest and best experience, revealing itself with love and ease for each one who is hearing this prayer. That love is unfolding as health and harmony, vitality and comfort, good physical expression, all the pieces of our bodies fitting together in exquisite perfection. Every muscle, every tendon, every organ, every bone, every joint, every tissue, everything in each of us is functioning and operating and revealing itself at its highest and best possibility, unfolding with that exquisite perfection, that health and vitality and comfort that's not something we're just striving for, it is actually our birthright. And each one is now returning to that experience of highest and best in our physical experience. The same thing is happening with our experiences of prosperity and enoughness and sufficiency in every area of our lives, in the financial and other ways that experience of prosperity shows up. That is unfolding now, again, as highest and best, with love and ease for each of us and all of us. And that love is showing up as relationships, as deep, committed, lifelong romantic relationships, as uplifting and enriching family relationships, as friendships and community bonds, as neighbors and community coming together, as colleagues and co-workers. That love is unfolding as mutual respect and uplift and cooperation to allow more and more good to come into the lives of each one of us. And I know it shows up as creativity. It shows up as the opportunity to share those unique gifts and skills and talents that each of us has been endowed with in a way that brings more good into our lives, into the world around us, and in a way that lets us be generously rewarded and compensated for the gifts that we are sharing. It's not a job. It is an opportunity to be that bright light of love that we are and allow that light to shine and that love to flow in our own way. Whenever I or any of us feel an absence of love or a lack of love, I know that we are being invited to open ourselves more fully to the love that surrounds us. I am God's infinite love. We are each God's infinite love. I accept that love now and always. I'm grateful for the love that I am, that we are, that I have, that we have, and that we share. And I let this be so. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That is the Practical Prayer Podcast for the 24th of June. Woohoo!
I can't believe it's half the year is over. You know,
Amazing.
On the 15th.
Amazing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And
by the way, for
was
those of you
sharing
who are
with
listening
people-
on New Thought Media Network, this is the Practical Prayer Podcast post show. So if you have a comment or a question that you'd like to put into the comments, you are welcome to do this. This is the part that's not going to go into the audio podcast. But as you're saying, halfway through the year, and what happened? Yeah, I'm just cleaning up from the holidays.
Yeah. Well, I thought about, you put so much energy into what I'm going to do this year to make it different than that last year. And I always stop in June and say, okay, so how close am I? Do I need to rethink some of this stuff? I never forget what I thought I was going to do. And now I got 6 months left. Is it enough time? Have I put enough equity in there already? So anyway, I just can't believe how quickly June has gotten here. And of course, the summer.
I'm glad when I get to the 4th of July and I've taken down the holiday lights, you know?
And when do you put them back up?
Sometimes I skip it entirely, but yeah, usually November, and they came down promptly this year. So, but that's me. And there have been times when they've made it the entire year.
And that's cool.
Yeah, I saw your reaction. Really, the Christmas lights. Oh my God!
When you first said that, I thought to myself, I hope he's not talking about Christmas lights, but I think he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you have a good time away?
I did.
I mean, are you?
I did. I had a good time away.
Because you said you hadn't seen your prayer partner in so long, and
yeah, it had been a couple of years since we've been face to face with each other. We talk every week. We talk every week and do prayer for each other on a regular basis, but hadn't been to see him face to face. Yeah, it's like a 3-hour drive for either of us, so it's a little farther than you just, let me just swing by. So it's the sort of thing we got to plan. So
okay.
So let me go have fun on the water.
So I got one question.
Just one? Oh my God.
No, one.
Only one.
I can fit it.
One for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
One for now. With a prayer partner and your book, how can you suggest that work, integrating your book into the prayer partnership? How can we use that?
There are a couple of ways to do that. You can, if you're new to this, you can start out with a book study and go through the opening chapters and then the closing chapters and start to get yourself into the technique of how to do a practical prayer. The prayer partnership part is basically telling the story. This is what's going on for me this week, and this is what I'd like to pray about. And I always take notes. And being prayer partners and at the minister level, we both know what we want the prayer to be. So we don't have to do the whole prayer. But if it's somebody who's just starting out with it, they start telling their story, it's about a relationship. It's like, okay, you turn to the relationship part of the book and you say, which prayer fits this one? And then put the particular affirmation that they want into the blank space. And, if somebody's dealing with a physical challenge with their health, then you go to the health part of it or the financial part of it. And then use that fill in the blank to particularize the affirmation. And that can work. And I of course, as an author, I want people to rely on the book. But as a teacher, the book is training wheels. Once you learn the technique, once you are able to do that without looking at the book, then go for it. And it is possible to get the same power and effectiveness without using the steps of the practical prayer in order. It's the consciousness that we are cultivating with the steps that are in the book. But once you got it, you can ad lib. And you can tell if it's working. You know how?
How?
The prayers work. And they get the result that you're looking for. That was almost a rhetorical question.
Yeah, well, prayer works. That's the whole thing.
And if there's somebody who's praying for love in their life and they keep on feeling lonely, you probably believe something that you don't believe you believe, or you got to change the prayer.
But that's why I thought about the prayer partner. It's good to, even though you have the book, it's good to have somebody to work through it with you, so that
absolutely
when you get to those times where you emotionally sometimes, and that was another reason why I picked it, emotional, because sometimes you can be at an emotional place where you're not thinking really clearly, and the partner kind of can help clarify some things. So,
yeah. And if you stay with the same prayer partner or the same prayer partner or the same group for a while, then they learn your story, and it's much less likely that you're going to pull the wool over their eyes by telling them, a different story. It's like, oh, he's complaining about his girlfriend again. Okay, well, we've heard this story before, and are you going to do the same thing? and want us to support you, and knowing that she's going to change, because she's not going to change.
Exactly. That was one thing I wanted to get out there with doing the prayer thing. It's really good, but having a partner, and if you're working with the book together, it gives you a base, a reference point to work with. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, prayer partners. I got a couple of groups that I work with on a weekly basis, and it's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. And this prayer is something you can't overdose on.
No, it's a good a good go-to place, rather than you say them in the morning and you say it at night, which is how you tend to tell little kids to do it. And I used to, and I'll say this, I used to not understand why people were so freaked out about prayer not being allowed in the school, and that happened like when I was in school, so it was so long ago. But it was still a conversation even when my children were going to school. And I told them, don't get involved in this. Pray wherever you want. Go in the bathroom, whatever. Nobody can tell you. I said, now don't stand up and try to start a prayer meeting in class. But other than that, you have your prayer, and it's a go-to place. So this book and a prayer partnership or a group is really a place where you can, I think you used the term when we were speaking about gas. You can get a fill-up.
Yeah, put some gas in your tank.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about prayer in schools is that there's nothing wrong with prayer in school. When we're talking about prayer in school, we're talking about the school board deciding what prayer to do in school. But yeah, somebody's going to be quiet. I can pray silently to myself, and no one will know that I'm doing it. I can pray in a stealthy manner. I can even pray out loud using language that people will not think of as prayer, but it's still a prayer.
Just why go through the whole thing? It's like, just do what you do, and just leave it. Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to start another topic because we're going to go, but I will point out that the whole controversy about the Pledge of Allegiance and the part that they added in the 50s, and it's got everybody in, that there's still argument about it, which is where they added under God, one nation under God, indivisible, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a huge controversy about under God. And my objection to that is not the God part, it's the under part.
Okay, so let me just ask this, because I feel bad asking this, but I got to do it. Do they still do the Pledge of Allegiance in school?
Some schools.
Okay. I just never got all wrapped up. You call that term wrapped around the axle?
Yeah.
I just never got all wrapped up about stuff like that. I just tell my kids, come, this is what we do. Go and, just this is what we do. And whatever somebody else is doing, that's them. Just don't try to stand up and stop anything in school and make it be your way. That's not what you're going there for. So
that's right. Learn what they have to teach you, and we're about to do a whole new podcast episode. I had a friend who was in public school, and there was one of the students got into a fight with the science teacher, and the guy says, "Why do I need to watch that?" It was this science teacher is trying to not get beat up by this 18-year-old. And I said, well, wait a second. After high school, you went into the Marines. You probably learned a lot more from that interchange than you would have if he'd just been talking about physics.
Yeah.
So you never know. All right, let us bring this episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast post show to a close. Thank you again, and I think we're gonna be back here. We'll be back next week. My golly, I'm looking forward to that one. Thanks, Carol.
Okay, see you.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.